Hey everybody, how you doing? I hope everything is well. This is not going to be a long live stream by any stretch of the imagination because I'm exhausted and I have to get up. Uh, so this is going to be a short one, and but it's important that I get this out of the way now and then work on making subsequent live stream vlogs because of the importance of what I'm about to talk with you about. It's a highly technical issue that quite literally dropped. I mean, this issue just quite frankly dropped in my lap. There's no other way to put it. And it happened today. Uh, just routine check of emails. And I got an very cryptic email that was from a couple of people who purported to be workers on Las Vegas Stadium. And I thought it was a prank. So what happened was that they identified the company out of Canada that's responsible for the cable net design. And but when they identified the company, they actually misspelled the name. So I did a search for the name, and it came up nothing. And I thought, oh, this is a prank, okay? And so I wrote back. I said, hey, I get trolled like this, and it's not funny because people's lives are at stake if things like this. Um, if it turns out that there is really something wrong and you're not calling it out. And to my surprise, because I had just jettisoned the whole thing right then and there uh, in my mind, but to my surprise, the person wrote immediately back and sent the document that was a meeting schedule that was very recent, uh, just a few days ago, that indicated that this person was a worker at the stadium. And another person sent me a text that indicated that they were a worker on the stadium. So that was all I needed right there. And we started a series of seemingly, even though it just happened today, just conversation after conversation after conversation because it's a highly technical issue that if they trust me to tell their story, I got to get it right. Um, so here's the gist of it. Okay, you know that cable net roof that's going up. Uh, that cable net, that cable roof, that cable net structure. Excuse me, the roof structure, that net is attached to what are called nodes. They're U-shaped, and those nodes in turn are attached to the compression ring. And as Tommy White put it, I think when he was talking News 3 Las Vegas, when they go up, you'll hear this sort of pop. Okay, but that hasn't happened yet. Uh, anyway, what my whistleblowers contend is that there are bad bolts in those U's, and the U's are designed to take a multiple number of cables, and that multiple number of cables in turn through the nodes attaches to the compression ring. So they are saying, hey, these things, well, as it was explained to me, that the first set of bolts didn't fit correctly. That occurred earlier this year. So there had to be a process of replacing those bolts. Some of them were brought in, I was told, from China, but they shouldn't have been. There's a sort of snuck in to get in under the tariff radar, right? Um, but nonetheless, the bolts were substandard. What I mean by substandard is rather than screwing all the way into their place, they fit maybe a quarter of the way in. And so, on top of that, the the very node itself, which is welded together, was said that in a number of cases there were bad welds. Now, my sources were very careful to say they weren't sure if this was a uniform case. In other words, that every single node had the same problem, right? So they were very. One thing I can say is they were very careful. To just they didn't want to give the impression that they were just going hog wild and saying, "Oh, this is wrong. Oh, that's wrong." They're very specific and pointed about the elements that were a problem. And it wasn't that they were, uh, how do I say this, uh, disgruntled per se. One moment, please. Okay. Anyway, as I was saying, it wasn't that they were disgruntled per se, but they were very concerned that corners are being cut to meet a deadline. And what I learned in doing the background research to add the text to this and resources is every effort has been made to put this stadium on a fast track. And contractors have acknowledged that in their uh, celebration posts that were issued when the topping off ceremony was held. In most notably, for example, most notably, a company called Arab Arab was said. Okay, that's the first one. And I'm going to start a second part of this live stream and come back. I'm going to end this one and I'm going to come back with part two. I have much apologies, but as they say, life happens. Yeah. I'll be back rolling dubs. I'm going to start another live stream after I take care of this emergency issue. Um, had to, so yeah. So I'll be back. Because what's going to happen is any moment now, I think this is going to be interrupted. But until it does, I'm just going to keep talking. Uh, uh, where was I? Oh, it's it's. I'm waiting for a call from Fayetteville Police because I'm hoping that there's nothing going on at our property. We're not there. At any rate, fingers crossed. I love modern technology. It's like victory. Anyway, uh, the problem is that these whistleblowers are saying that the nodes are essentially designed, well, they're designed to take multiple cables, and in turn, they are attached to the compression ring around the stadium. Here's the upshot: if a bolt is malfitting, or there's a bad weld that made the node itself, okay, and the stadium is built and opened, and you start having events like a football game, what will happen is that you'll have, as my informants explained, a kind of a compression and a contraction in the stadium structure, and then also, as I pointed out, simple harmonic motion. People doing the wave, walking, talking, all kinds of things that people normally do in NFL stadiums, let alone stadiums, right? Those two common activities could cause the bolts to pull loose. And if the bolts pull loose, the roof comes down, the structure comes down, and then depending on the situation, thousands could be injured or worse. So that's why this is extremely important. And the, my informants have alleged that the company that is responsible for this, and they were again very careful about this, okay, but they said that the company by the name of Frisinet, Frisinet, uh, it wouldn't like this. Okay, source said some of these workers jumped to Frisinet, and that's when they brought to their attention that the bolts had been breaking, and bolts had been breaking at other spots in the stadium project. Fresinet was not required to retest the bolts. Some of the sources didn't want to blame them, but they assert that due to the fear of pissing off Mortensen McCarthy and delaying the job, Fresinet representatives reported to have said, "We're not going to worry about it." Then another source came back, uh, the tandem, and said, um, you know, when that Mortensen McCarthy did know, quote, "Believe me, it got to them." Okay, so my source asserts that Mortensen McCarthy knew about this problem. Okay. So I checked, according to Fresnet's own online brochure for 2018, they were signed to work on the roof of what is now called Legion Stadium. And writing, we also signed major contracts, including Las Vegas Stadium roof in the United States. And then the Las Vegas Stadium Authority confirmed that, saying that the firm is the cable net roof system contractor. That's what they're identified as. And my sources explained the bolts that are used to tie the compression ring are substandard, and the reason is that Fresnel was a subcontractor responsible for the roof construction, is responding to pressure by the main contractor, Mortensen McCarthy, to build Las Vegas Stadium fast and under a tight time frame. And indeed, an online document by another Las Vegas Stadium subcontractor, Arup, reflects and confirms that claim. And Arup says, and I'll just cut right to the chase, it says that it writes that Arup conceptualized and implemented flexible design features such as the adjustable structural connection at the cable truss to compression ring interface to align with the construction schedule. The design build team embraced a collaborative review approach with the Clark County Department of Building and Fire Prevention to achieve the project's phase permit goals in alignment with fast track construction goals. One of the major innovative elements that Arup incorporated into the project is the intricately designed cable truss roof, a departure from the classic structural engineering solution. The lightweight cable truss connection, to the structural steel provides a significantly increased construction tolerance during big lift. Okay, and so they were, very proud of this. But again, note the comment. The design build team embraced the collaborative review approach to achieve the project's phase permit goals in alignment with fast track construction goals. So all throughout this project was the rush, okay, to get this thing done and approved. And on top of that, I was informed, and I had a feeling this was the case. First of all, in past uh, videos of the interior, I would notice that the cable net was sometimes raised in a kind of a cockeyed, or lopsided fashion. Well, I was told that was a problem. And what it reflected was that the construction workers were told to go through and pull on cables that they felt the nodes were properly made and there was a bolt problem. And so the result is this raising like this. But they were pulling on cables that they hadn't tested to know if they're appropriately designed to sustain the weights that they're being asked to hold. So they were stressing them. The overall problem is that the way the whole sequence was supposed to work is that the main structure, the surrounding curtain walls, the main building frame around it, the lanai doors, all of that was supposed to be finished before they put the roof up. Okay? Because then you'd had a completely finished structure from which to support the weight of this pulling. But instead, you don't have that. And they've been pulling, and sometimes they do this at night. They go there and they get involved in these pulling activities. And so my source says that everything was to be done and signed off on. The main structure, steel nodes, all 100% done before they started putting weight on the cables. Instead, they were still inspecting nodes and pulling on cables. If one wasn't ready, they'd go to the next one. And in other words, it might have sounded like a good idea. A lot of you would say, oh, they're taking it out of sequence. Like, this is a great thing. Well, I'm here to tell you it's not a great thing. Okay? It's not a great thing. All right. I've got to check on this one thing. I will be back with a second part 2 for this live stream. Be alert. See ya.